Oh, and I charged you like, oh, yesterday.
Yeah. Subscribe.
Well.
Well, my son.
Yeah. Yeah, we know.
And you are not.
My grandson was 14. Better than us. Oh, we knew that.
Actually, his iPhone, can you say something?
I did so that you want to.
Actually, yeah, it's a very different perspective. Yeah, it's good.
I hear something.
That kind of stuff.
Well, makes getting coverage you need.
Yeah.
And CK coverage.
Hello, Green Domain. You are unmuted, just want to let you know. Please unmute.
Okay.
Here's my name.
This is Bill. I just want to tell you, you're unmuted. We can hear everybody else.
Oh, shoot. You hear me?
Yep. Can you say a little bit more? Did you say that your clients?
All right,
Can
why don't
you hear
we
Yeah.
begin? Good. Assume we can hear you fine. We can also hear some background noise, so if you could go on mute, just to help the conversation, but we'll be sure to call on you when it's time. Good evening, my name is Kenny Stewart. It's January 16th. This is not an official meeting of the Planning Commission. This is the first of several listening sessions. I just joined the Planning Commission a week ago tonight. And so from this point on, I now have baggage, but no baggage with last year, but I did want to join the Planning Commission to try to help. And my job tonight is to simply help facilitate the conversation. I hope it's going to be constructive, and I hope it's going to be civil. And my job is to help facilitate so that everybody who wants to say something has a chance to say it. Because this is a town hall, that structure has a little bit of a presentation at the beginning, which we'll get into in just a moment. The other sessions that are more listening sessions are just that. It's like a focus group when you sit down and you talk. So again, my name is Kenny Stewart. I live in town year round. Just joined the Planning Commission. Other members of the Planning Commission that are here, Mark Boudet, Michael Berman, Bill Mulder, and also helping us tonight is Marie Wayman. Marie is going to be our chief scribe, and she'll write some things on the notepad just so we can reflect on some of the key issues that are being heard. Now I'd like to turn over to Bill. He's going to present some slides that he wanted to cover to kind of tee things up, and then we'll get into the opportunity to hear from you. That's the goal, is to hear from you. Okay, Bill?
Great. Marie, do you want to say anything about?
Hi, everyone. Nice to see everyone. My name is Marie Wayman, and I'm a resident of Harbor Springs. I've lived here full time for about 10 years, and 20 years prior to that, I was a vacationer in the same house. We live on 3rd Street. So I'm here to just help out because I think this is a great process, and I hope people have thoughts that I can write down. I'm not real fast, and sometimes it's hard listen and think and spell properly at the right time. So, I need some help. Thank you.
Hey, folks joining remotely on Zoom. We're trying something new. Normally with city meetings, everybody's muted by default, but you're wide open now. So as this is a conversation, not so much of a presentation. So I just want to caution you on that. If there's something you don't want the rest of the group to hear, it's up to you. Okay, and how's the sound, folks on YouTube? Are we good? Okay, great. All right, I'm going to start out with a bit of a background, and I'm taking off from some comments made by Bing Holmstein at our last meeting. And he laid out real clearly that the number one priority is to talk about why we should update the zoning code, or why we should think about updating the zoning code, and why now. So that's what this whole very short presentation is for. And purpose of this broader meeting is to provide background about the zoning code update considerations and to get your opinions and ideas for the planning commission. Meeting's being recorded, and we have notes being taken, so hopefully we'll be able to convey things. So the big why consider updating our zoning code? And the answers are to anticipate the future needs of our residents, to improve the clarity and usability for residents and staff, to reduce bureaucratic processes and costs for residents where it makes sense to do that, and to sync with the city's master plan goals and the future land use map. And maybe most urgently, the zoning code has some significant gaps and risks. And I'll talk about those right now. So here are the gaps and risks that I identified in our current zoning code. You may have different opinions. You may not see them as a gap or a risk, and that's what we're going to, one of the things Kenny's going to ask you about in the discussion portion of things. So what I see is that our community is vulnerable to some possibly undesirable uses. And the first one is that adult-oriented businesses are permitted in the central business district with special land use approval. Second one, I don't know how you feel about that. Second one is mobile homes are a permitted structure in our two residential zoning districts, R1B and R1C, and also the R2 district. So that means that somebody could buy a lot and decide to put a mobile home on it in our residential neighborhoods. Again, that's a special land use approval. Another one that I've identified is the rooming houses are allowed by special land use approval in the R1C. And in our mobile home park, mobile homes are allowed, of course, but also single family dwellings are allowed. And I know some of our mobile home park residents were concerned that there would be pressure to change the mobile home park into regular homes. Anyway, so that those uses are allowed by special land use. Another thing we've identified is that some controversial construction methods are not prohibited. So shipping containers could be used as a construction method. And
What?
with no special approvals. And
No special approval?
yes, that's right.
Oh.
And we also don't have them prohibited for storage. Somebody could use one as a shed right now, and that most communities are looking to restrict that. And then we have no hard limit for the building height in the central business district. We do have a 30-foot stated limit, but rooftop mechanical systems, elevator and stairway housings are not limited, and those could be pushed to 10, perhaps 8 to 10 feet above the 30 feet. So those are some vulnerabilities that I saw, and again, we'll talk about it. You agree that those are some risks or not. We also don't have architectural standards for our downtown buildings. And some modern business types are not permitted anywhere, so the definitions, were done long before there were brew pubs, tasting rooms, and some other things, especially in the, food service world. So, that's, some of them. Here are the others I've identified. We only have one sentence about floodplain protections for residents. And there's, some more wording in the city code, which, seems to be out of date and references 1981 flood maps. So, that could be a risk for us too. And it's just, if somebody's gonna be building something or remodeling something that just so unlikely they're gonna find the city code and go to that. We also don't have any shoreline protection requirements. The Watershed Council came and suggested some to us, and of course, we don't have them in the front code. And we're not up to date on dark sky lighting standards, which towns around are adopting as well. And then front porch requests are common, if not the most common, zoning board of appeals cases. And people often ask if they can make their front porch deeper and intrude into the front setback to be a little bit closer to the street, and maybe improve their view a little bit. And so that's one that we could potentially, if people agree, give a little bit more leeway and maybe save some administrative approvals on that. And then we've talked a lot about the restrictions on guest quarters, and that's the current name for guest cottages, mother-in-law apartments, and accessory dwelling units. And the rules are that only family and friends may stay on your property, and they have to limit their stay to 21 days. And then they have to go away for a month before they can come back to your property. And there are special privileges actually for R1, for homes in R1A and R1E, and they can have their domestic employees stay, and there's no time limit for them. So different regulations. So that's what I've identified, and we'll talk about whether, how you feel about that, and see if there's any feedback about that. So why consider updating now? And so here are my thoughts on that, is that they saw you and the planning commission might say those are gaps and risks that can be addressed and should be addressed sooner rather than later. We have a very high knowledge about zoning issues and engagement in the community right now. We joked about we probably have more zoning knowledge per capita than any town in at least the Midwest. It's also likely to be a 15-month or more cycle starting in January of last year. Right around this time, the Planning Commission and ZBA had a meeting, and the new zoning recommendation was rolled out. In February, there were 2 public hearings at the Planning Commission, and then numerous discussions at City Council, and a bunch of publicity, bunch of conversation with the community. In early November, we had an election, zoning code was repealed, and so we're on track under the agreed upon work plan of the Planning Commission to make a recommendation to City Council by the end of March, if we can. And then City Council would likely think about it for a meeting or 2 or 3 or whatever. So all that adds together to be a 15-month long cycle. That seems long enough to be a thorough consideration and analysis. My sense in the community is that residents are pretty fed up with all this. They're fed up and just can't believe we can't come to a joint resolution on this thing. That's a good code and a good solution for the community. And my final opinion is I believe a good solution is quite possible, quite doable, and we ought to do it. We'll do it. Here are the zoning code aspects, so more nuts and bolts now about what people have suggested that we ought to take a look at. And you can take a look at this at your convenience, but it's more nuts and bolts than philosophical. Here's the community engagement calendar that we're running. Tonight is the first meeting. Town hall listening session we're calling it. Starts out. Yeah, it starts out with just a little presentation and then almost all discussion. We're also running 5 open houses, and those start Monday afternoon, 5:30. And that's a drop-in kind of a thing without a structured presentation of any kind. If people don't feel comfortable coming to more formal meetings, although this one's pretty informal, they can just drop in and ask questions, share ideas, and do whatever they want. And 2 of those we're going to hold outside of City Hall. One will be at the Historic Society and one at Holy Childhood Church. So here's the work plan that Planning Commission is working towards. And it starts out in earnest third week from tonight, the 23rd. And we'll begin talking about the zoning code aspects that you just saw there. And then followed by 2 meetings in February and 2 meetings in March. And perhaps, if ready, we can make our recommendation to the City Council and in March, and they can decide what they care to do next. Any questions on the things I've just gone over before I turn it back to Kenny? Hey, Peter Askew, you are unmuted on this end, so fire away.
Yeah, hi, Peter Askew, 153 Soul Street. I just had a question here. You went over 2 pages of gaps and risks. And then on the 3rd slide, you've got a bullet point there that says knowledge of zoning issues and engagement is high. And then we have a situation where the voters have actually repealed your proposed new zoning. So why exactly do you feel you need to push forward ahead and do the exact same thing? How are you? I don't understand how you would see this as potentially being different this time around.
We don't have to do anything. I mean, people may weigh in and say those gaps and risks are okay. And I didn't say what methodology the solution ought to follow. So, the Planning Commission, the whole Planning Commission, that I believe would be wide open to a number of solutions and a number of, different things than appeared in the first one.
Maybe it would be helpful for people to really get a good understanding from the people on the Planning Commission. The details around your 2 pages of gaps and risks. To delve into each one of those things and talk about, how homeowners have been harmed or will be potentially harmed if we don't make these changes.
We can begin talking about that right tonight.
Okay.
Are the gaps and risks essentially things you've heard people complain about or are frustrated about?
No, I would have her to guess that most people probably aren't aware of those particular risks. Mark, yeah. Mark, days.
Right now, we're sort of like cooling down under that in this process started. One of the things that motivated the Planning Commission was that the old ordinance, now the current one, was very much outdated. It's outdated in the language that it uses. It doesn't have a lot of terms that we use today to describe different occupancy in businesses. It's very subjective. And use a lot of soft gray words that didn't have really fine, that didn't have definite definitions. So it's very much interpretive. And the thought was that what we needed was to have a more contemporary zoning ordinance. There's a structure to zoning ordinances that ours does not follow or does not have. And a standard ordinance would be something like the one that's in Emmett County. That's a standard, normal, modern, contemporary ordinance. And that's pretty much standard across the country. You know, most of the areas I work in, they have what I would call a modern standard ordinance where things are broken down, definitions are clear, there's not a lot of gray area. There's some interpretation, I believe the zoning administrators have to have the right of interpretation, but sometimes we have to make hard calls. Our ordinance, if you look at it, doesn't have anything really solid to stand on about places. There's a lot of contradictions within it. It's structured so that it's, the regulations are scattered throughout the entire document. An example is that, you could design a home or a structure in a certain ordinance, and other things that would affect what you can do are buried somewhere else in the document. There's been many times, whichever here you could talk about it, but there's times when, you know, there's another thing that's going to control what you can do on a piece of property, but it's buried somewhere else. Example of that is you're allowed to, you know, have a certain size building. Well, buried down in a document somewhere, like in a really weird place, there's a requirement that you have to have a 3-to-1 ratio. And it's not listed anywhere else, but there's one little sentence down in some paragraph buried in it. I learned that the hard way. You know, designing a project, you're going, oh, wait a minute, there's this other thing way down buried in here. And also the words that are used. This document is 76? 1976, it was created. You know, it's very wordy. That's not how the world operates in construction and design. You know, it's back in the day, yeah, maybe that was fine. That was something that really drove us to really look at it. And then all these other things pop up as very specific things. But generally speaking, our ordinance is outdated. It's not, it doesn't function the way that any community would want it to function. Regardless of what's in it, it's just the structure of the document itself is just horrendous. And so that's one of the things that really drove me to be part of the process, was to, to bring in a sense of contemporary ordinance. Because places I work, you know, in different states and everything like that, this is the worst ordinance I've ever worked with. So I've been doing it for 25 years.
It could be rewritten so that it's clear, and then in rewriting it.
Oh, absolutely. Well, how are you filling in all of the things? I mean, it's just a structure. What you fill that in with, I think that's what Bill is saying,
Yeah.
we have to talk about. And there's some real issues within it, you know.
So is there a list of what the issues are that would need to be?
Had a pile of them up there. But, you know, everybody's got feelings about that, it's fine, but just look at it generally and broadly. That's what's, you know, started driving the whole thing. And then you get into it more, and you look at other ordinances and the way people are thinking, you look at what we're guiding us, like the master plan, you know, housing, things like that. That all into it, but you have to have that structure that it goes into. That's pretty critical.
Well, we don't have to talk about solutions right now. We're just identifying where we are, and we gotta have discussion and, you know, see what our priorities.
Are there other comments?
So I reached out to Bill and to Beckett and Rader because we had heard that 80% of the zoning code wasn't touched and only 20% was on sort of a platform during the election and things like that. So Beckett and Rader got a substantial amount of money, up to $35,000, and they have a $45,000 budget this year in the planning commission to pay them for their work. So my question would be, sort of first, before we start, would be all the rearrangements that they did in the code that was then eventually, but all those rearrangements, I think, have done what you're talking about. They've cleaned it up, they've sectioned it, they make everything searchable. And then the 20% is probably what, you know, the community voted for or against. So we don't have to worry as a group now to do that cleaning up of the thing because it's already been done. Am I understanding it correctly?
I'm not sure what the question was.
Okay, so the new,
With the work that they have done, has been reformatted. Forget about what the line item says for the numerics, it just has the structure been fixed to address.
It has. It's way better than the last one. I mean, there's different ways to do it, but you know, if you look through it and the way they have it structured and because we eliminated, I remember, you know, there's a lot of duplication in the old ordinance. So you clean that stuff up and that allows for things to be organized in a good way. You know, so I think we took I don't know if it's finalized, but we took a huge step forward from where we were.
But hasn't that been repealed? And are we now working?
Oh, yeah, we're in the old one. I'm not talking about the old one. I'm talking about the.
Well, okay, may I? The other day I decided, it's on Good Street. I decided I wanted to actually see, difference in the ordinances, so I borrowed from the city, the hard copy. And I think you can actually get a picture of it. If you wanted to build a house on a lot in Harbor Springs, first of all, you have to find it. This is the old code. This is the 2005 code.
The current code.
The current code, yes. So this is the page that you need to look at to see what your restrictions are. Well, first you have to figure out if you're an R1C or R1A or R1 whatever. And then you have to look at all these check marks. And you have to make a little pattern so that you can see which ones apply to the place you're in. And it is just, I'll put them up here after if anybody wants to actually see them closer.
So Linda, could I paraphrase, your point is that the current code,
Yes.
current code is very difficult, perhaps unworkable or something to that degree. Is that right?
At the index. Because the index did not tell me where I needed to go to get to see if I want to build a house on my lot, how big or how small it had to be. This is the new one. The index said residential. Well, okay, this is the 2024 and that's the 2005. It's really, we've all gotten to the point we can't even agree on what we call this thing. But anyway, it was very clear. I immediately could look down at this chart and see what the setbacks are, what the percentage of the lot, which everything. And my understanding is we're still working with this.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so the repealed code has been rewritten and you see that as clear, right?
So we have an optional exercise for folks at the end of the meeting, if they'd like to define their property on the zoning map and then take a look at the zoning code that's in effect today. And just see what your permissions and restrictions are.
I have maps that are color coded. If you want to go and play the home game, you can do that and go from there. So.
May I ask a question, Karen? I want to just make sure I've got this right. To just see if this was really, so you started out with a question of like only 20% fixed, but I think the real crux, and this is what I want you to look at and see if this is what you meant. Has the structure been fixed in the 2024 version? Is that what you were getting at?
Yeah, the point, what the point was, is that in the zoning code that was repealed, we gave it an index, we made it easy to read, like he's saying. We made all those changes. There, 20% of it are things that we as a community, the ones that did vote against it, actually don't want, because we want to change it a little bit and have us all communicate. But 80% of it has now been rearranged. Those check boxes that you're referring to are gone. And so it may be that only 20%, 35% needs to be fixed.
So maybe just some of the elements.
The elements.
Right,
And not
symmetrics, yeah.
Perfect, okay, so I can.
Rick
Flip that
Tarczynski,
page.
465 State Street. Based on what Karen has said and the numbers that she's given, I was a former member of the Planning Commission. You all know me. And I think what we had was a very good thing. And I think it was repealed because of outside pressures of people that aren't residents of the city. And they influenced with the online campaign. But with Karen's idea of 80% is good, I hope that the planning commission will, in these meetings, start off with the basis of 4039, 439, and work that out instead of going back to the original plan and what we're working on now. I think it will drag things out and make it a lot longer process. So just starting from 439 and taking away the 20% that the people didn't like and rearranging that, I think would be a lot smoother and quicker process than going from 440 and redoing everything that we spent.
And again, 439 was the proposed new code that was repealed, just so you know the numbers. Yep.
I'm Michael Behrman. I'm both on city council and I'm on planning commission, new on planning commission, formerly on zoning board of appeals. I'm not speaking on behalf of planning commission as a whole or other members of planning commission, nor am I speaking on behalf of city council as a whole. I'm speaking on behalf of Michael Behrman. Okay. First of all, I made a comment during a city council meeting that I hope that we start with the zoning code that was repealed as a framework just for that very reason, Karen, that the structure of it doesn't have to be totally rewritten. There are many improvements were made as far as, and I think Mark alluded to those. Secondly, it was defeated 478 to 403 or something like, I don't know. But well, yes, it was defeated. Even within the yes voters, probably half the red signs that I saw out there said repeal and improve. Facebook posts on We Love Harbor Springs also said, you know, the old zoning code does need to be improved. So as far as the why, we are a little over 1 square miles and we have 17 zoning districts. Today I walked my dogs on Ottawa Street. 4 zoning districts on a street that's barely, probably not a third of a mile, an eighth of a mile long. My wife and I went before planning commission and paid our almost $1,000 in escrow to open up a home occupation, a dog grooming business. Now, it probably took me hours and hours to find out in the old code because we were operating under the current code, I should say, if we could even have a home occupation. Well, you could in one residential district, R1B. Thank goodness we didn't live a block over because we wouldn't have been able to have a home occupation. That's not right.
Michael, I wanted to move us forward here.
Okay.
So you are advocating fixing things and not.
That's the why. I listed many reasons at city council meeting why I propose, you know, a new zoning code is necessary. But we keep on hearing, you know, why? And I think, you know, are these gaps harmful to the public? I don't know. But you know what? We need to be forward thinking because doing nothing also isn't, you know, we could go on forever with the 2005 iteration of the current zoning code, but we've seen under that code development that, quite frankly, I don't think is characteristic of Harbor Springs. It hasn't been all that great. If you do nothing and aren't forward thinking, then I think you get in trouble.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there other comments? Yes, in the back.
Pam Trochinsky, 465 State Street, building on what Rick, Karen, and Mike have said. So this zoning code is current one we're using, have been using 19 years old. That means that the kindergartners up at school will be graduated from college and have kindergartners of their own before whatever we write here and now gets revised. So we might well be writing a zoning code that's gonna last us 19 years. So if we're even thinking 5 years into the future, this is a pretty serious 5 years. I've lived here, I think this is my 12th winter. Take a look, I can take a look at what's happened just in those 12 years, the 12 years of that zoning code that we're operating under now. We have development down on the shoreline that has completely devastated wildlife habitat and has pushed animals up above the block, eating suet nighttime ranges. We lost an absolutely beautiful older house up on East Bluff, gone. People, when I talk to them that live up there, to this day, tears come to their eyes because that house is gone. They wish to God they had been able to afford to buy that house when it was for sale so that they could save it. We took out huge, beautiful evergreens at the entrance of town that were signature of Harbor Springs and served us to clean the air 24/7, 365 days a year, and we replaced it with acres of roiling hot cement and chain link fence. Welcome to cement and chain link fence. Beautiful. So I think if we looked at other people's zoning codes, they do this kind of thing. They consider green teams. They consider sustainability. We do have a storage container over off Lake Street, which is beautiful. Somebody has to look at it every single day, rusting. Why don't we include in our zoning code protections for historic properties that we all love? Historic trees that we used to love don't have anymore, can't grow again. A beautiful wildlife pond down here in the corner that currently has piles of aluminum dock over it instead of happy little ducks swimming. Our zoning code needs to think about those kindergartners who are our own kindergartners who want to have blue sky, clean air, and wildlife and for trees.
Thank you. Thank you. And just to clarify something, it does, I know this for a fact that the zoning code can be reviewed more often than every 19 years. That's just the way that it happened to come about. But, you know, it's not like whatever we do here is going to be put off in a safe for 19 years. There are other opportunities.
There are usually multiple updates per year.
Yes, that's right. And
This one was from 1976. The group we have now is redone in 2005. So.
amended. Yeah. Okay. Are there other comments?
Questions?
Yeah, there was a hand raised earlier from Zoom. We do welcome anybody who's on Zoom to comment as well. And by the way, I'll remind you that you are in control of your mute button. We aren't doing it from here. So anybody from Zoom want to comment? Reed Romaine. Unmute your microphone and then go ahead.
Reed.
You'll have to unmute from your side. There we go.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, go ahead.
If I understand the 2005 version, it has an as of date. So it implies that it has been updated with minor changes through time. Well, changes could be major or minor. We don't really know. Is that true?
Yes, it's been, I think there were 161 updates or amendments that I saw in the table over 31 years or something like that.
So the vulnerabilities, if they were truly vulnerabilities, those could or could have already been inserted into the 2005 zoning code. So even then, to justify changing the zoning code based on the shortcomings isn't a really strong argument. Secondly, I know on the surface, it seems to make sense to collapse things and make them similar. But some of these changes depend upon the lot size and shape. I found with ours, it kind of causes some perverse situations because we don't have a rectangular lot. We have an L-shaped lot. And for instance, there's a 12% setback or 10-foot setback now on a side setback, whichever is greater. In I'm in R1C, by the way. And I look at that and we have this L-shaped, if we want to put a garage back there, it does some really perverse things in our yard. I'm happy with my, if I were to see changes, I think now the way R1C is that it's classified as a single family dwelling. And I think with special usage, you can have maybe more than a single family home, if I'm not mistaken. But I think what we're seeing here with this vote, the 20%, let's for the sake of argument say that's 20% of the things that people don't like, but the impact as far as people's, I can't think of the right word is. I just had surgery a couple of days ago, so I'm on a few things that probably inhibit my ability to speak. But that there might have been only 20% of the code changed, but it has a lot more impact on individuals than that 20%. And
Yeah, I think your point's well taken, that it's not 20% when you view it from your perspective, it's everything, so, well,
yeah.
Yeah,
I'll stop talking because I'm gonna start becoming totally.
All right, thank you very much, Carter.
So my general sense is reformatting the code and not changing anything material is, there's no complaints about that, making it so it can be read. It is, every change is 100% impact. And so I know in our particular area, if we're going from 17 districts, we're going from 17, originally it was whatever, 17 or 19 districts to 7 plus 2 overlays. When you really step through that, that's actually like, I don't know if I've got those, so it's like 28 different districts because everything that happened before 2025 is grandfathered in. Everything that happens after, if it's new, may or may not be able to be built under the grandfather. And so if in my particular district, the way the overlay worked, if somebody came in and built, they could either build, I think they could build commercial if they wanted to, or they could build residential grandfathered in under the way it was. And if you go forward 10 years and there's a new planner here trying to figure it out, they're going to lose their goddamn mind because they'd have to figure out what parts of those grandfathered clauses can or cannot be done. So it actually gets perhaps even more complex. We've heard, I would say, of people who I've heard make complaints about this that haven't been very outspoken. They're very concerned about the changes on their particular property. They have found issues that they have tried to raise, and through whatever in the process have been told you can't do anything about it now. So that frustration is there, that there's a particular impact on my house. I'm one person out of 150 houses, 1,500 houses. I can't get any voice if I go talk to the city about it. They like, can't do anything about it. It's new code. That's the way it's going to be. And so they voted no.
Yeah.
They have very specific reasons that they have raised. I think that it may be worthwhile to predominantly focus this on areas that people have raised as concerns, and to change the overall code so it's formatted clearly. How do you do this? Take a bulk of some things that need to be cleaned up, either from the state law or things like that, and then take, hey, these are the issues that have come to the zoning board of appeal multiple times. Let's get those fixed. And in a few areas where there is this real nesting of zoning, maybe get those groups together and basically say, look, can we make it, like if you pull up the map,
I can't.
if you look up on Lake on the far right hand side of the map,
yeah,
like this area right here, I'm not quite sure exactly what the logic is there, but it's pretty, I don't know, there are a few areas where There are six, as you said,
That's
there's 6 or
not-
7 zoning districts in
Corner, yeah, of town.
But somebody called me today and basically said, why are we changing this area in Glen Drive and converging them? And so I think that the issues in some zoning districts are different. So it might be there through be 13 or something. I don't know, but
Like, I'm not speaking for the planning commission. None of us are, as a matter of fact. We're all individuals in this meeting. But as a new member, first of all, I'm not going to tell you how I voted, but I will suggest that if the folks that were coordinating efforts about the repeal were able to bring some of these specific issues together so that they're more visible, I think that would be helpful. And I will say this as an individual, I'm a little out of turn here, but the proposed information that was presented last May, I believe, had some specific things, but it also had some sort of categorical large things that were beyond the scope of the planning commission. And I think it would be helpful in this, we're all in this community together process, if those could be distilled down, and those that voted yes do the same thing. Those that voted no do the same thing, so that there are tangible issues, just as you're suggesting, and we go after those with more of a laser scalpel approach.
yeah. And to finish the point on that, I think that I've discovered there are more issues since that list was published in May. And they're very, very, like my step is a problem and it's almost impossible to document.
Okay, so I won't talk as much. Are there other comments that anyone would like to make on either these topics or anything different? It can be something that hasn't been mentioned yet.
Am I hearing that we can start out with agreement with the 439 format and work through the individual sections, complaints, pros and cons, whatever? Would that, can we, is there anybody in the room tonight that doesn't think we need to update the code? Because now why are we doing this has become a big question out there in the internet. And
I don't think I've heard a single complaint from anybody about changing the formatting.
okay.
I don't think I've never heard anybody make that.
We have hand raiser MJ.
Oh, yeah.
If you could unmute at your side.
You're open, MJ.
Yeah, it's Janie Jenkins, and I have a little bit of a raspy voice. I'm sorry, but I live on 2nd Street, and I've been a part of this community for 61 years. And as long as we're talking about other issues, to me, this wasn't about trusting my neighbors or, as the gentleman who just walked away said, outside pressure. Nobody pressured me. I'm concerned about the direction of this little 1.5 mile town. You know, we don't need more density. Everyone loves it the way it is. Why would we increase density? Why would we increase our business district? It's developer friendly, if you ask me. And even increasing the height of our cute little town. I don't want to see, what are those buildings at the end across from the Lyric? I don't want to see our entire town look like that. It would be horrible. I just think that when you guys are moving forward, please think about the unique characters of our town and think about the town and the people and why we love it, and put us first, not developers. That's it.
Bill, and I'll be developing the process for us to examine all these ideas, and I hope you'll be involved. And up on the screen are the items that people have listed, and one of those is building heights, and we're talking about all the dimensional kinds of things that matter. So love to have your input real time. We're all going to do this together this time and get a good collaborative effort.
If I may, there was a suggestion made about specifics. Pro and con, I mean, whatever it is, these are great, but they're not specific. I think that if someone has a specific complaint or a specific desire, that's what we should be looking at.
Very well. Yes, in the back.
Okay, so the idea about specific requests, and I remember hearing that conversation from the get-go, like, we understand that people aren't happy about, what is it that they don't want, what is it they do want? Here are some things. We'll start a grocery shopping list, Bill. How about that? One of the things that I would like Harbor Springs to seriously consider is, again, sustainability. I'd like this town to transition from gas-powered engine lawn care to electric-powered lawn care. There are towns all over Michigan that do this, around the country, programs in existence, easy to copy this. Some of it is based on giving like rebates and incentives, and some people take like 2 to 3 years to transition from the old to the new. Some set a standard by having the city go first so that others follow suit. So that's one thing I personally would like on the shopping list. Let's transition out of gas-powered lawn care into electric-powered lawn care and think about the positive effect that would have on people's health because they don't have to breathe those fumes, on people's hearing, they don't have to listen to those guys. And it would go far into the future in terms of sustainability for those kindergartners. That's one thing I would.
Okay.
The other thing I would like on that list, and you should ask, is we need historic protections in the town. This old code gave us all kinds of buildings that we don't like looking at. And that building across from the Lyric is like our showcase that we don't like, our guy that built that. So that's another one.
I'm sorry.
Historic commission.
The historic preservation.
On the shopping list.
On the list.
Historic preservation.
On the list already.
Could, if we had a commission, they could definitely write programs and policies that would help us protect features of Harbor Springs that we know. There are 2 things.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. Other comments? Yes, in the back.
I want to be 539 East Brook Drive. I agree with him. Although I just bought a battery powered leaf blower and it's about ready to get thrown in the trash because it takes 15 minutes to drain the battery. It drives me crazy.
We have all those.
We don't have that problem. From the
You
beginning,
two work out the leaf blower specifications somewhere. Yes.
Aqua Street has been cited as a reason to rezone the entire town. Just fix Ottawa Street. I think everyone would agree that 4 zones in 1 street with 26 houses on it is ridiculous. Lisa, forget her last name, on M119.
Lisa Nickel.
Yes, with 2 zoning districts on her lot. I think that should be fixed too. If you can identify the things that don't make any sense and fix those. And then I'd like to add to the laundry list things that I don't think if you sat down with any neighborhood in this town and said, what do you want on it? They're gonna say, let's put quadplexes in our district or even triplexes. They'll probably say, okay to duplexes. Everyone would appreciate granny flats because most of us have them anyway. Other things will occur to me there.
Wendy, how do you feel about the risks on this slide?
The risk on.
The risks on this slide that's on the screen.
Are you comfortable letting those things happen?
Are okay with you?
Wondering is, okay, I'm completely bonkers and I wanna open an adult sex toy operation in town. How do I go about doing that? Don't I have to go before somebody to ask me to do this and they will then say, no, you're not doing this.
Well, let me answer to that. Right now, Bill's point is that the current code system will allow that to happen. Doesn't encourage it, certainly.
But they have to apply for a variance.
But there is no description in any of the paperwork that gives the city any justification to say no to that. So
I think that's a common sense thing that probably no one in town is going to fight. I think no one has the reason to support smaller lot sizes.
But if I wanted to lose my head and set something like that up, I would say I want to do this. And if somebody says, I don't want to let you do that, then that would be arbitrary and could possibly lead to lawsuits.
What can it go on?
In today's world.
Can it go on the ballot? I mean, I'm all about democracy.
I don't know if, I don't mean to answer all this stuff, but I don't know if it's practical for every new building to go on the ballot. Bill's point is that there are some gaps.
Let me answer one question. The way the current zoning code works, it lays out a special land use process. It's really defined. And someone would have to say, hey, I just moved into town. I'm your new neighbor downtown and I'd like to, I'm gonna open up this adult oriented business, whatever it may be. And I'll be applying to the planning commission for a special land use approval. And I'd like your support on that. And then the planning commission has to hear it, crazy as it, maybe and repulsive as it may be, planning commission has to hear it, has to not judge the business itself, but look at things like traffic and, 7 standards that are built in and often has to say yes, to a valid business type. So that's how it would work. It can't go to the ballot the way the zoning code reads.
They're not allowed to be subjective.
Into our community of somehow that we are a Christian-based community.
No. Unless you say you can't have it, it is open for business. It's been proven before, people have done it in other states,
Okay.
in other cities.
And if they open, who's going to support it?
Okay, okay.
I want to close out with opinion, like, are you okay with mobile homes in the residential districts as housing, approved housing units?
Okay, right now we have modular homes.
These are mobile homes on wheels that you can sit on a foundation, but you can on a slab. Because that's in there, and if you're not good with that,
I think one of the problems that would probably keep that from happening is the expense of the lot.
well, no, the question is, the zoning code allows it. Are you, just, are you okay with that?
You're going to design as much as you can to keep out but everything, nothing's airtight.
Well, we can say that mobile homes are
So,
not,
No,
not allowed.
I wouldn't be supportive of that.
Okay.
Well,
And how about
Wendy,
room?
first of all, those are all incredible points and thank you for raising each of those. Actually, constitutionally, we can't say no, believe it or not, to an adult oriented business but what we can do is say where it could go in our city and
I understand that, but if it's not supported financially, then it's going to go
totally
away.
right. And
So if it is supported financially, then guess what?
But this is about
We like
zoning
it,
and about
we
what
want
we have.
so not we, but the zoning code that was repealed actually put it in the mixed use district up on Hoyt. Is it up by
Industrial district.
Industrial area.
exactly, because we had to give it a place, I don't want to say the planning commission gave it a home just in case someone did apply for a special use permit. We couldn't be sued on constitutional grounds. Whereas, we have an ordinance against dispensaries. And that was because the state, when they passed the law, had a one-time, cities or municipalities could make an ordinance that you couldn't have it as a one-time shot. We were able to do that.
Okay, we're starting to get into the weeds a little bit. Mark, did you, wait.
Before you sit down, I know you're getting ready to sit down. Do I have your point? I think the point you were making was there are too many zoning districts. But what, do I have your point written down?
It's common sense that when people are getting out of the street in too many zoning districts, I don't think anybody's gonna have a problem with that.
So you're in favor of correcting that. So,
Yeah.
Mark Boudet had his hand up.
Well, I just want to say that, I spoke earlier about contemporary zoning ordinances. And, in the contemporary zoning ordinance, you have to have a place for everything. If you don't, then you have to, the reason you have a place for everything is because if you don't, is that then they can put it anywhere they want. So you have to, so modern zoning ordinances try to, short circuit all of those issues. We try, when you tell where a certain thing has to go, put restrictions on it. If you look at, the central business district requirements in the county zoning ordinance, I think it's like 24 pages long. They just stacked up all the limitations, so can't rely on common sense, can't rely on financial feasibility and all that kind of stuff. From a zoning perspective, it's my understanding that you have to think all these things through. When we went through the process before, we're being guided by the master plan and what we thought people would want and all that kind of stuff. We get more information now, which is wonderful. But, we tried to address all those things and put everything where it belonged, where it made sense. But every 100% right? Absolutely not. But, that's what modern zoning ordinance has to do. If you don't, you are exposed to liabilities, lawsuits, and that's why most communities in the state and other states, they make sure they take care of these things and they don't use soft words like common sense or reasonable or quaint. You don't use those words in a zoning ordinance. They get you in trouble.
Wendy, do you have other comments? Yeah.
My husband, Pierre Guitar, built the gallery in 1992. I promise you, my husband is the maximum man. Whatever the building height restriction was at that time, that was it in 1992.
Yes.
I see Peter asked you though online.
Okay, go ahead.
He's
And then you'll
waiting.
be next.
Peter, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here. I just, in light of what we've all just been discussing and listening to, the thought occurred to me, how do you go and balance by right versus special use in this type of a situation? Because, if you have a zoning district and everything is essentially by right, then a lot of these things can just happen and nobody can say anything about it, which I think people would not necessarily like. But if you make the zoning districts heavy on special use, at least those things can come before a group of people that can be objective and you mentioned like 7 criteria that you've got to meet in order to get approved. But I'm just curious as to what you all think about how do you go about balancing these things so it's just not a free-for-all.
Yes, this is Bill again. I'll answer that. So for every use that's defined, that's a zoning term for the kind of business or the kind of home or what you do with it. We have to decide what the approval process is. Is it by right? Is it by special land use? Is it not permitted? Is it there's some intermediate kind of approval? So, use by use, and it'd be negotiated based on, input to the planning commission and their best judgment.
Yeah, Carter.
2 points. On the zoning, we should have as few zoning districts as we need. Not a number, so it's some combination of makes sense to consolidate these. It does not make sense in my mind to consolidate the TR district into CBD, but specifically the list you had up initially in terms of, it strikes me if homeowners and property owners have a reason to change their property in particular ways, those are important things to pay attention to. So I'm not a fan of boarding houses, but the fact that there was a demand for boarding houses and a reason to do it, I sort of recall that issue coming up. Rent apartments weren't really in any of the proposals. There have been some discussions about the area that the rentals are up by the mobile homes. In this process, we ran into people that said, you know what, we would pay to help upgrade those and put in twice as many units. And if that would help in the pressure of what we're trying to do here, so there will be some opportunities in this discussion where there are things that, hey, we think we want to do this or we want to make these changes, where there are people who are willing to step in and say, look, here's a particular area, we do have a problem, let's put it over here. And in that particular area, I think I know for sure, if somebody wanted to come in and say, yeah, we would let 2-story apartment buildings go in that area, there are people that would underwrite the funding.
So your point is that we need to make sure we capture the things from the individual owners?
I think we first need to hear from the owners. If we are seeing demand for boarding houses, understand whether there's a demand for boarding houses instead of just like, that's thing one. Thing two is in some of the friction that we're getting here of, we need to get more affordable housing. We don't want these things built here or there. Why don't we take those aside and say, look, is there a compromise? Could we redevelop a particular area? Are some of the people who are frustrated on both sides of this willing to put some money into it? And I think you can take that out of the code process and take it off to the side and even do it under a zoning code of Board of Appeals type of process and build out some of the things that we're anticipating we need, but do it based on the fact that current owners want to do that, are willing to put their money where their mouth is, are willing to do it, but maybe not change the zoning code to try to guess whether it will happen.
I see. Okay, thank you. We're past an hour. I'm happy to keep going another 10 minutes. If you need to leave, that's fine. But I sense that there may still be some comments here. Anyone here in the room before we go to? Yes, yes.
I've read the master plan and it seems to me as though the key phrases were open and airy and maintain character. And from that is not increasing density and so on and so forth. So it's my understanding that the commission is looking for bullet points. What's the problem with the proposed one that was repealed? So you have a to-do list in terms of identifying issues and resolving. Carter Williams has got a good point. If there's a problem there in terms of where the overlays are and what have you, then those can be addressed as an individual item. So I would hope that these groups get together and identify specific problems with the code that was repealed because the structure appears to be agreed to. Now, with regard to some of those bullet points, an example, the lighting proposed by the whatever commission it was. 5, 6, 7 years ago, the city put in new streetlights on East 3rd Street. It lit the place like an industrial inner city. There was no prohibitions. Had it not been for the discretion of the city manager, it could have stayed that. So yes, I think that part has to be addressed in a new code. Secondly, on our street, a lot was purchased that had one home on it. It's a nice one. It's an open area. It was broken in half, and it's my understanding that 2 individuals bought those 2 lots. It's also my understanding that on East 3rd Street, which is very residential, at least from Judd to Maine, we could allow duplexes. I don't think anybody in the community wants more duplexes, so I could be mistaken. In any event, it's that kind of thing that I think the commission wants, and those are 2 of my issues for you to deal with, to put on the bullet list to deal with. And probably third and probably the most contentious is the maintenance of the bluff, where both residents above the bluff can maintain the views that they want, and the people below the bluff can be reasonably assured that in those 500 storm events, it's not going to wash into their homes.
Okay, thank you. Reed Romaine, unmute at your side and hear what you have to say.
I'm just sitting here and I find the discussions interesting. Going back to what I'll call them the vulnerabilities, Bill, that you mentioned. I find it almost kind of, in a twisted way, kind of comical, because what I think is undesirable, the person sitting next to you may not think so. And for instance, like with the boarding house, I know that some people in the neighborhood, when that came up, some people didn't want it, but there's some people that weren't opposed to it. But throwing into what Carter was saying, sort of all of a sudden starts pulling this together. I say, okay, I don't like this, you don't like that. But we don't disagree that it should be accommodated somewhere. And without putting a judgment on people of, well, you don't want these people living next to you or this or that, if we stay away from that judgmental stuff, we'll come to an agreement, and I think in a good document in the end. I don't know if I'm making sense, but I'm gonna stop talking.
Do I hear you right that you're in favor of addressing the more tactical, specific things where there are conflicts right now? Is that right?
As they are determined, because we're gonna have conflicts, because I know I don't want to be facetious, but everybody's that's sitting in there probably has a different opinion on one thing or another than the person beside them. And that's just human nature, and that's fine. But I think there's a solution, at least for a good 80% of things.
All right, thank you. Any other comments from here, from the room? Are we winding down a little bit? Okay.
We're gonna have 4 more of these. And if the same people come, we're gonna.
Yeah, and there are a total of 10 of these meetings, counting both formats. And please help us to get the word out. I wish the list of all meetings would have been in the paper yesterday. It didn't make it. But if you can pass the word for people to sign up to get the emails from the city and to learn about these various sessions, we do want to hear from as many people as possible.
Yeah, I've actually got some good news on that topic. The city is gonna be sending out letters to every single property owner, long requested, informing them about this process and sharing the meeting schedule. So, US mail to every property owner, so.
Yeah.
Can we do a quickie on all of your bullet points here as to anybody in the room who is opposed to, or maybe if you said, who in this room opposes adult oriented businesses in PD, and with anyway.
Thank you. I would think at the end, people would come up and just take a look at what we have, and I'm sorry, my writing is a little bit wonky. But if you raised an issue and it's incorrectly or not fully expressed on the flip chart, please let me know and we'll just write it in.
Yeah, thank you. I respect your comment, but that might be kind of time consuming. And also, we as a group in this room don't represent the city as a whole. And so I don't know what we would have when we got that information, but I appreciate you wanting to have the sensitivity to these things. So, yes.
Anybody can take this off of the agenda online version, mark it up and email it back in.
Yeah. That's absolutely right. Yeah, this is public information on the website. If you want to say yes, no, yes, no. You can forward your opinion as you wish. Yes.
Carol Woodard, 141 Snyder Street. This is very interesting about your different perspectives. What I would remind people is that whatever zoning code revision will come up will not satisfy 100% of the people all the time. And we have to focus on the fact what is best for the community. Not, I don't want that person living next to me, so I don't want to adjust that lot size, that it's for the community as well.
Okay, very good.
My last,
Go on. Last comment.
I get the feeling that everybody thinks that we should update and revise. And from this meeting.
From what I hear is that everyone seems to be in favor of getting the structure of the document correct, knowing that there are some elements that need to get hammered out. Fair.
Some former government officials have often referred to loopholes in the 2005 code, but never have been specific. And so the more specific we can get, if these are gaps and risks, if there are loopholes that also we need to attend to, they need to be listed.
Okay. All right, very good. All right, with that, we'll call it an evening. Thank you all very much.
My daughter lives in the Linear Pines.
Thank you all on Zoom.
Off of Lake Street.
It's more repeated. It's income.
It's,
Income,
right, it's,
depending on your income.
and it was.